Hello, I'm Askar Sharif and you're watching the news from Kazakhstan. An unexpected turn in the case of Salimjan Nakpayev, the ex-deputy governor of Atyrau region. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court governing board decided to acquit the previously convicted official. To recap, Nakpayev was found guilty of usurpation of power and sentenced to 4 years in prison. However, the prosecutor general was dissatisfied with the decision. After Dolbayev's protest, justice sided with the former deputy governor.
On Tuesday, the Supreme Court announced its decision regarding the notorious case of the former deputy governor of Atyrau region, Salimjan Nakpayev, charged with arbitrariness in March and convicted to 4 years in prison in April. His assistant, Kazakhstan, was sentenced to 2 years. However, the Prosecutor General's office disagreed with the decisions of Atyrau courts and ruled to acquit both former officials. It has been decided to drop criminal charges against Nakpayev as well as my client Kazakhstan, since the court did not find components of a crime in their actions in accordance with the legislation. Salimjan Nakpayev was a deputy of Birgay Rıskaliyev. When he was accused of arbitrariness and dismissed, Nakpayev complained to the president and various officials, accusing his boss of corruption and prompting a new investigation by the prosecutor's office. Soon afterwards, Birgay Rıskaliyev was also dismissed by the nation's leader himself, and Mukhambetov replaced him as the governor. Only last week, the role Nakpayev played in these developments transpired, when the Prosecutor General explained that the former regional leader violated many laws. The financial police launched criminal proceedings against Rıskaliyev, although his whereabouts are still a mystery to the public. In the meantime, the national leader met with Mukhambetov in Astana on Tuesday and requested to take control of regional finances. The new governor promised to meet this request. The head of state demanded that the funds assigned by the government are spent efficiently, and especially so those assigned for the social programs. On behalf of the Atyrau region, I promise that this request of the national leader will be implemented. Kazakhstan's lawyer, Nurlan Zholbolov, is in a hurry to catch his plane. He secured the Supreme Court's acquittal and is on his way to Atyrau now. The attorney hopes that this Thursday or Friday, his client will be set free.
Aron Atabek and his cellmates are being tortured inside their colony. The movement against torture, abuse of power, published a collective address signed by Atabek and 5 other cellmates. It is addressed to the UN Commission Against Torture, the OSCE Bureau, Kazakhstan's Parliament, and the Prosecutor's Office. To recap, Aron Atabek is serving in Karaganda's AK-159/22 penal colony. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison after Almaty's Shanırak micro-district events. Atabek was able to speak about the harsh treatment and legal discrimination he received from the colony's administration to his son over the phone.
The list of violations is posted on Aron Atabek's website. This includes the horrible detention conditions, lack of water supplies, as well as water treatment and even drainage system. 90% of the inmates are suffering from TB and dysentery. Atabek himself, soon to turn 60, has a number of chronic diseases and is frequently subjected to psychological tortures. Inmates go through raids and physical abuse by armed people in masks on a regular basis. Prisoners' stuff is taken away while they are humiliated and tortured in a devious manner. I admit the possibility of provocations against Atabek on the part of the prison administration. There were cases of mass beatings and bashing in the barracks in order to set prisoners against Atabek. The Penitentiary System Committee claimed to be unaware of the mass petition and referred reporters to the chief of the Karaganda Region Department of Corrections. The inquiry sent there should be answered within 3 working days, at least according to law. Since Karajal falls under Karaganda Region Department of Corrections jurisdiction, you would have to address the issues to them. Send an official request letter to the chief of the department, Abdurrahman Shotayev, and you will receive an answer in no time.
On Tuesday, Vladimir Kozlov, the leader of the Alga political party pending registration, who is continuing to provide testimonies for the 4th day in a row in court of the case of inciting social hatred, recalled last year's strikes of oil workers in Mangistau region that resulted in riots. Kozlov's interrogation took almost the whole day and will continue on Wednesday. Kozlov's statement was even more convincing on Tuesday. He described the origin of the public movement Khalik Maydani, which included people with active civil stand, including the members of Alga party. Speaking about the National Front, the politician told the court about activists' trip to Zhanaozen and the goals they had, constantly providing legal, moral support to workers. Members of Khalik Maydani tried to reach the authorities. There were numerous complaints, letters addressed to the higher authorities that were left either unanswered or ignored with a simple phrase saying that strikes are illegal. Meanwhile, the politician added that officials at different levels who had to react to the events regularly attended meetings on human rights in Europe.
No senior official visited Zhanaozen to clarify the situation. The defendant believes they intentionally decided to wait for oil workers to give up. Kozlov says the events of December 16 in Zhanaozen were avoidable if only the authorities addressed people's demands. Kozlov also commented on the case materials concerning Mukhtar Ablyazov, including his appeal to the people of Kazakhstan, one of which is completely irrelevant to the case. It says, quote, "Get up off your knees, Kazakhs, and cast off the tyrant and the thug," end quote. In fact, this was a response to the letter of the country's intellectual elite concerning the official language status, addressed particularly to 138 people who signed the petition. The investigators only included the appeal to make the case more significant, said Vladimir Kozlov. The politician also spoke about the president's numerous servants and aides, who apparently give misleading information to the national leader. At the moment, local administrations perform the function of legitimizing the decisions of the governor's office. We try to convince oil workers in Zhanaozen to use their chance and get elected to administrations. We explained that administrations have a broad range of legislative powers, but their members are not using them in the interest of the people. We focused all of our resources to nominate candidates from our headquarters. Azhangul Amirova was working on nominating candidates in Zhanaozen, but the events of December 16th happened and the work ceased. We have all grounds to believe the conviction is inevitable, despite all the evidence and arguments of the defense and Vladimir Kozlov himself. We are prepared for the worst. However, I want to believe that all these irrefutable arguments will have a positive result with the judge and prosecutors if they use common sense. Otherwise, it leaves us no choice but to conclude once again that there is absolutely no justice in Kazakhstan.
The opposition politician's trial was at the center of attention in Warsaw, Poland. Earlier, member of European Parliament Petr Boris and German Ombudsman Markus Löning held a press briefing upon their return from Aktau and Zhanaozen. Violations during the course of investigation noted in the Freedom House report were confirmed by observers. Details in the next report.
Member of European Parliament Peter Boris visited Aktau last week and attended the trial against politicians Vladimir Kozlov, Serhiy Sapragali, and the leader of the oil workers' strike movement, Akhzhanat Aminov. Later, during the ad hoc conference in Warsaw, Boris shared his views regarding the proceedings and said that the whole trial indicates the real situation with upholding democratic values in Kazakhstan.
To są oczywiście procesy polityczne, w tym m.in. Władimira Kozłowa. Ja miałem okazję być świadkiem.
The trial over Kozlov shows the European Parliament how well the democratization process is developed in Kazakhstan. The outcome of the trial is essential, as Kazakhstan and European Union are currently negotiating the new cooperation agreement. The conference in Warsaw on September 6 could be seen as a rehearsal of a big address in the European Parliament scheduled for October. So far, Young Democrats from Poland revealed quite a few violations in Aktau proceedings and see clear political motivations in Vladimir Kozlov's case. The violations were blatant to the point of outraging the MEPs. From the very start, when I was monitoring the process, I could not help but think it was a staged play, and it was painful to see that Zhanaozen tragedy was used as a means of doing away with political opposition in Kazakhstan. The next step is to get rid of independent mass media, and I will touch upon this issue later. The principles of a fair trial were violated. First of all, the defense did not have a chance to familiarize with the state's evidence used to make up the indictment, and we are talking about over 11,000 pages here. Chief editor of Vzglad newspaper Igor Vinyavsky knows well how far the court can go with its charges. The journalist was invited as a guest who personally experienced the Kazakh justice system. It took observers about an hour to go through the main points of the trial. Vinyavsky said it may be enough to help people convicted in Aktau and Kazakhstan in general. The Aktau tragedy has changed the history of the country for what it was like before and what it is like now. Had the Europeans and Western institutes not interfered, things could have gone even worse. It also concerns my release, which was brought about these very institutions. The public trial of Vladimir Kozlov is also the result of their pressure. The next report was done by Mark Löning from Germany. He has visited the families of the men convicted for the tragic events in December and the victims of the police who opened fire against protesters. Last week, the residents of Zhanaozen told the German guest that they still live in fear due to continued pressure. This truly shocked Löning, as he truly believed the worst had already passed.
Голос Республики reporter Alla Zlobina, famous for her reports from Zhanaozen, received a summon to the Mangistau regional DIA that was brought to her by a criminal investigation officer. Zlobina doesn't know the reason she was called to the police station. The note just said that she must show up at investigator Timur Izlabinov's office to discuss the matter of concern to her. The journalist believes the invitation is linked to her reports on the persons missing after the events in Zhanaozen. According to Zlobina, the National Security Committee department officers kept an eye on her even since she first wrote about the secret burial grounds in the newspaper Голос Республики. Zlobina sees the development as a good result and is ready to help the investigation, although it is hard to predict what exactly will happen next, just in case the journalist is planning to bring a lawyer along. I'm not going to disclose my sources, but I went there to clarify the facts and met the person who knows what happened there. He spoke to me not knowing that I wrote the articles and warned me that the author is in serious trouble because the issue is quite big. He didn't allow me to take notes, so I had to memorize the information. It was evident that this person was very frightened. And the man who spoke to me of how he found a grave of his brother and saw a bullet wounds in his body, he refused to say anything afterwards and even claimed he never found any graves or saw any bullet wounds. I feel that there is something going on behind all these stories. I'm concerned and I will go to the interrogation along with the attorney. Almaty continues to remember murdered politician Altunbek Sarsimbayev. In honor of the prominent figure, a film premiere and an annual awards ceremony were held. The event organized by the Sarsimbayev Fund was attended by his colleagues and family. Details in the next report.
What will happen tomorrow with our country? These words open the documentary devoted to the 50th birthday of the late opposition leader Altunbek Sarsimbayev. The film was created by journalist Kasım Amanjol, while Respek Sarsimbayoglu, the brother of Altunbek, came up with the idea behind the project. People in the 30-minute short include Sarsimbayev's friends and colleagues. They all remember the politician as a strong person, true patriot, and a man with a big heart. It is worth noting that one of the featured commentators is Marat Tajan, the secretary of the Security Council. Tolegan Zhukeyev, one of Tajan's predecessors, currently heading Altunbek Sarsimbayev's foundation, says the documentary is just the beginning and more projects will follow. The idea is to reveal his true personality. I do not think the film raises many pressing issues, so a bigger project in the future can give a full assessment of that. I am certain that a new comprehensive documentary will definitely be made. After the presentation, the annual Altunbek Sarsimbayev Award was given to Karanada journalist Dulat Amanjol, editor of newspaper Tribuna Inga Amanbay, observer with Panorama newspaper Yaroslav Razumov, and Guljan.org reporter Diljaram Arkin. All award winners said that this was a great honor as well as responsibility. Diljaram Arkin spoke about the status of freedom of speech in Kazakhstan. In order to get rid of the dog, burglars first try to calm it down with words. If this doesn't work, they throw it spiked meat or simply kill it. Our authorities do the same thing. First, they impose censorship, and if reporters do not keep quiet, they can force it with multi-million lawsuits. And in worst-case scenarios, with physical intimidation, there is just one goal: to silence everyone and hide the truth. Altunbek Sarsimbayev repeatedly touched upon the issues of freedom of speech and pressure on independent mass media. When he served as Minister of Information, Sarsimbayev insisted that only 2 constitution articles be applied to mass media, as other laws only promote censorship. Every day there are trials in Almaty and Astana. Newspapers are shut down and criminal cases initiated against political opponents of our president. Our goal is to show how many people have to suffer, be labeled criminals, penalized, and incur financial losses. How many law enforcement agents have to break the laws and violate the constitution in order to keep one man in power. Yaroslav Razumov, an observer with Panorama who donated his monetary award to Zhanaozen Children Foundation, remembers the time when Altunbek Sarsimbayev joined the opposition, and it seemed that the time for changes had finally come. When he joined the opposition, I was hoping that it was an opportunity to make political and social life better. I was hoping that things would change, but not through a revolution, but normal, evolutionary ways. Saltanat Altusheva, Sarsimbayev's widow, told journalists that Altunbek was primarily a husband and a father. She is a rare guest at the annual awards, but this time Altusheva was even accompanied by her 19-year-old son, who chose to avoid cameras.
Это очень важно, сохранить память о нем как о человеке, который любил шутить.
It is very important to preserve the memories of the man who loved having fun and getting together with friends. He loved going to the countryside over the weekend and during vacation. He went to Turkey only because he wanted his kids to see the sea. He played jokes on his friends and sometimes made mistakes. He was an ordinary man with his advantages and disadvantages. It is very important for me that people still see him as such.
Иногда ошибался достаточно часто, даже он был простым, обычным человеком.
Even now, every time the phone rings, I sometimes think that it is Altenberg. He remembered all birthdays of his close ones. He was always the first to wish me a happy birthday. He would call at 6 or 7 in the morning. We miss him a lot.
The topic of a national referendum raised in July this year by Astana's public activists received a continuation. Leaders and activists of various parties and movements, totaling around 20 people, created an organizing committee and presented the upcoming referendum's program on Tuesday in Almaty. What voters are offered in the next report.
A new initiative group in Kazakhstan came up with the idea of holding a national referendum. 3 questions will be addressed to the citizens of the country: the non-participation of Kazakhstan in the Eurasian Union, the nationalization of illegally privatized strategic state enterprises in the 90s, and the introduction of elections for governors and mayors. I believe no one has the right to take on these initiatives without the approval of all Kazakhstan citizens. Everyone has to decide how they want to live in this country. Right now we see that the authorities are making decisions for us and we do what they want. But I don't think we should blindly follow all of their decisions. In July, Astana's social activists led by MP Zauresh Batalova already called political parties and NGOs to seek a referendum, although a total of not less than 30 issues were proposed for the agenda. The new initiative is drastically different, and the group is now led by Bulat Abilov, who accepts the possibility of further changes as the issue gets tackled. We are proposing a different and a more substantial agenda. It may of course change to some extent, but we believe that these 3 topics are very important. Zaure expressed her full support and sends her best regards. Although she is abroad, you can see her last name and her signature are also on the document. Jarmakhan Toyakbay, another co-chairman of Social Democratic Party Azat, was not among the members of the initiative group. According to civil activists, the referendum represents their civic stand and it is not related with the party's agenda. Toyakbay explained that Abilov is currently busy with a civil initiative of preparing a national council, which actually displeases many of his fellow party members. Nothing will come of the National Council. We do not really need it. We have been there and done it before several times. All prior events resulted in nothing and never raised important issues. We see no meaning in them. On the other hand, the referendum is far more important. If Jarmakhan wants to join us, we will not mind. Founders of the group plan to hold their first meeting in the beginning of October. According to law, the group has to have at least 500 members and must produce a resolution. Later, it has to collect 200,000 signatures in support of the referendum. In the last 10 years, the opposition failed twice in getting their ideas off the ground, while last year's referendum for the extension of President Nazarbayev's presidential term until 2020 was an overwhelming success.
More than 300 Petro-Kazakhstan oil products employees in Shymkent are preparing to go on strike if company management doesn't meet their demands. Oil workers said a collective agreement was not signed with them, vacations are not given out, and sanatorium tickets are not being paid for. Moreover, there has been no pay rise since 2007, violating principles of labor wages indexing.
Yerlan Baltaev, the leader of the petrochemical industry workers' labor union, came to Almaty from Shymkent to tell the press about the unresolved issues and reach out to the head of the oil company. The government owns 50% of Petro-Kazakhstan oil products, with another 50% held by the Chinese partners. Baltaev said that all the labor union's demands to eliminate violations were ignored. The leaders of the labor union have appealed to the General Prosecutor's Office for help and are currently preparing for a mass protest. The company is reporting to only preparing their reply to demands. The head of the Confederation of Free Trade Unions of Kazakhstan, Larisa Kharkova, says that their main goal is to include the labor union into the collective agreement and abide by its rules.
Было дано задание администрации Куланбаевым, чтобы в течение месяца они провели процедуру присоединения.
Kulambayev has given a task to carry out the merging procedure within August this year. Unfortunately, nothing has been resolved in the last 2 months. This also concerns social benefits. For instance, financial aid has replaced medical benefits, but this completely violates the rights of workers.
сделали как материальную помощь.
The former Semipalatinsk nuclear testing site was stripped of its entire infrastructure for underground testing of nuclear weapons. This was voiced on Tuesday by the Director General of the National Nuclear Center, Sergei Lukashenko.
A lot of work is still ahead of us. Generally speaking, the operation was initiated around 1995. Now I believe that together with the Americans, we are finished here. The official closing ceremony will be held on October 10th. Experts closed 181 adits and 13 test wells at the Balapan site of the Dagalian array, sealing off the access to nuclear waste. Eastern territories of Kazakhstan have been traditionally used for hazardous testings for 40 years, especially the infamous Semipalatinsk site. Nuclear testing was later revealed as extremely harmful to local environment and population. All testing was abandoned in 1989, and the site closed 2 years later. The damaged area of 1,000 square kilometers of land was divided among 3 regions. Since 2009, works have been underway to restore the land to be used for agriculture.
During the session of the Cabinet of Ministers, Vice Prime Minister Serik Akhmetov said that tariffs which are set for water are not high enough and that with time they must go up. More details come next.
Our country is low on water resources and therefore everyone should be saving it. I reiterate, we need to be aware of the water rate limit, which is very crucial. The only way to reconstruct and repair our water supply network is by raising rates. Certain regions and cities register up to 30% of water losses. It's wrong to waste it. In addition, the official says there will be compensation for socially vulnerable groups. Akhmetov lost his temper upon the speech of the Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Bakirjan Sagintayev, who reported that eastern Kazakhstan has the lowest water rates, while the meter readings attest to very high consumption. Nevertheless, the reaction was the strongest when the Information Minister Darkhan Manbay took the floor. The official revealed that Kazakhstan's mass media will be banned from publicizing unverified and unofficial information during emergencies, with the restriction limited to state-run outlets so far. Although the minister failed to clarify what should be done if state authorities delay the information release or refuse to comment on the situation. We've reached an agreement with management of state-run media on preventing dissemination of negative information and interpretation of official information during emergencies, which undermines the information reliability and the speaker's expertise, steering the public reaction. Commenting on the matter, Dariga Nazarbayeva explained in an interview that there is no law to ban media outlets from releasing information, and therefore the agreement cannot be legally binding. The job of mass media is to be the first to inform the population of what is happening in the country, especially at the time of emergencies. The officials, in turn, always want to maintain a blissful image, said the MP. It's their job, but they need to work harder if they want to achieve that.
Kazakh athletes have won 13 medals at Open European Championship on underwater orienteering in Spain. Kazakhstan was almost dismissed from the competition as it is a landlocked country and has no training base. Upon returning from Spain, the members of the team organized a press conference in Almaty.
We have a very tight-knit team. I want to thank all of them for the contribution in the last 2 months. When you are in the pool, you don't think about anything but turns and orientation. When diving, you take a compass, a depth meter, and a lot of other things. But you're also expected to think, and it is just hard to express with words. I've gained a lot of experience, and once again, I want to thank my coach for the silver medal. The medalists say the state has to change its approach towards unconventional sports. Coach Vasily Vasilyev is concerned about the lack of attention to his athletes, even though they put as much effort as the Olympic crews. The athletes hope for the authorities to give them some incentives like they did for the Olympics champions. We understand that the state allocates money only for Olympic sports, and no one, including the sports minister, chairman of National Olympic Committee and heads of national teams, can do anything about it. They finance us with the leftovers of the Olympic teams. We get around 50 times less funds than the national swimming team.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Stay well.